Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree. It is Christmas Eve, and today I'm doing my top 25 forgotten TV shows. Now, some of these are going to be more forgotten than others, but most of these are shows I can't find streaming anywhere, and I don't see a lot of people talking about them on Twitter and such. So number 25 is one that really confuddles me because this was a Disney Channel show. In fact, this was one of the shows that Disney used to launch the Disney Channel back when it was brand new. And it's called the Torkelsons. I don't really know how to describe the Torkelsons. It's another family sitcom, basically. But what makes it unique is they have a single mom raising a whole bunch of kids, and she has a person renting a room in her house. And that's where most of the antics come from. But it's not, last time I checked, available on Disney Plus, which is really weird. So that's number 25. Number 24 has been canceled. Well, most of these shows have been canceled. And 24 is not so much a reality show as it is more of like a talk show. But this was the talk show I watched, and I don't ever see anybody talk about it. And it's called Sally, Jesse, Raphael. The short version is it's 90s smut TV, just like Jerry Springer and all the others. Nothing special. Number 23, I do not remember where this came from. So it could be Nickelodeon, it could be HBO, it could be one of the networks, I don't know. But it's called Eureka's Castle, and it's a puppet show about a dragon named Eureka that lives in a castle. And it's fairy tale. And that's pretty much all it is. Number 22 is another one that should be streaming on Disney Plus, but isn't. For some strange reason. This aired on the Fox Kids network. And it's called Eek the Cat. And it's an animated show, obviously, about a cat named Eek. And it's kind of like a spoof on Garfield in a roundabout way, but that's not like exactly what it is, but that's the best way to explain it. Number 21 is one that people are very familiar with the movie franchise, and people are very familiar with the video games, but I never see anybody talking about the cartoon. And it's another one that isn't streaming anywhere that I can find. The movies bounce around from streaming service to streaming service. And this is called Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Most of these shows are going to be from the 80s and 90s, but some of them might be newer. We'll see. Number 20 is a newer show, and it's another one that I haven't found on streaming services, but it was popular, and it was on Netflix back when Netflix had everything. And it's called Melissa and Joey. Melissa and Joey is a city councilwoman played by Melissa Joan Hart, who has two teenage kids that are not her kids, but she's raising them because their parents, I don't remember, died or disappeared or something. And she hires a nanny to raise them, or help her raise them. But she actually hires a manny, which is a male nanny, in sitcom land, played by Joey Lawrence. And I liked this show, and I don't understand. It's new enough, and I thought it was popular enough that it should be streaming, and I can't find it anywhere, and I don't know anyone who talks about it. Number 19 is one that is more known by people my age who watched Nickelodeon in the early 90s. Again, this is Melissa Joan Hart. Before she was Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which is what made her a megastar, she was Clarissa on Clarissa Explains It All. Now, this is another family kids Disney Channel type sitcom, but it was on Nickelodeon. about a young girl who talks to the camera and gets into hijinks, and that's pretty much it. Number 18 is going to be confusing because there are two shows with the exact same name. And I'm not talking about the talk show. I'm talking about the sitcom. I'm talking about Ellen. Ellen was a show that came and went really fast. It was really popular for a while, and I liked watching it. I thought it was pretty funny. And then Ellen DeGeneres, who is the star of Ellen, came out as a lesbian in the 90s and decided she wanted her character on the show to also come out as a lesbian. And that got the show canceled. So it's another one left to the, the dusts of time, I guess they say, or sands of time. Number 17 is another cartoon from the 90s that was real popular. And again, this one aired on Fox. But it may have been syndicated, so it may have only aired on my Fox. It may have aired on a different station where you live. I don't know. But this is Conan the Adventurer, which is really weird because this was continuing the trend started in the 80s where Hollywood studios would make Saturday morning kids shows based on R-rated adult movies, which is what Conan the Barbarian was, not a kid-friendly movie. And I watched Conan the Adventurer pretty regularly, and so I rented Conan the Barbarian from the video store one day, thinking it was going to be a live-action version of this, and boy was I surprised. Number 16 is another cartoon that I remember coming on Fox, and it's actually called Fox's Peter Pan and the Pirates. This was the Fox Kids Network's answer to Disney. This is another one that doesn't get talked about a lot, and I don't even know if anyone remembers it. Number 15 was one of my favorite shows in the 90s. This was another animated show. And this one had a unique gimmick in that portions of the episode were actually filmed in 3D. And so while you were watching the episode, you were instructed to put on your 3D glasses, which I did not have. So this show didn't last long because it was very expensive to produce due to the 3D segments. And when I say 3D, I'm talking about like Avatar and the Avengers 3D with the glasses, not CGI like, Reboot or Beast Wars, Shrek, etc. I'm not talking about that. And the show is called Bots Master. And this one did have toys based on it that were not very popular. But again, I haven't been able to find much information on it online. It doesn't come up on shows, lists of popular shows from the 90s. YouTubers who talk about shows from the 90s don't talk about it. I've never seen anyone mention it. So it's relatively forgotten. Number 14 was a response to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and it is Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad. This show is unique in that there is no Zordon, elder, adult leader character organizing the group and giving them instructions. They just sort of stumble upon their powers and figure it out for themselves as they go along. Which does take a lot of logic leaps that, 13, 14-year-old high school kids wouldn't be able to make logically, but it is what it is. And so they're a band, and what they do is when they play their instruments, and they have these weird gadgets on their wrists, and when they play their instruments, they get digitized and sucked into the computer in the cyber world where they fight computer viruses. But it's basically fucking Power Rangers is basically all it is. Number 13 is another 80s cartoon. This is digging into the weeds. I have talked about this toy on my toy channel, but I have not seen a lot on the cartoon, and it's Rainbow Bright. Rainbow Bright is a cartoon about a little girl who has magical rainbow powers, and she fights goblins, I guess, who are gloomy and try to take the color out of the world. It's not a very good show, I'll admit, but it was, fun. Number 12 is one I know about. I watched it as a kid. I had the toys, and I have Googled it, so I have verified that it does in fact exist, but I've never met another living person who has ever seen it or heard of it or knows what it is. And this is called the Popples. Now, Popples were sort of a toddlers, girls answer to Transformers and GoBots. And what I mean by that is they were critters, little humanoid Pokemon type monsters that transformed into a ball, a soccer ball, a basketball, whatever. But they were stuffed animals. So you just sort of folded them in on themselves, which is why they're called Popples, because they pop. I do not remember anything from the cartoon. I have never been able to find the cartoon on any streaming services or on the high seas looking for it on places where you look for obscure TV shows. I've never been able to find this show. So I have been able to verify it did at one time exist, but it is pretty much forgotten to time. Number 11, I feel like doesn't get its fair due. It was a popular Sci-Fi Channel show that doesn't come up when people talk about popular Sci-Fi Channel shows, and this bums me out because it was my favorite Sci-Fi Channel show, and in my opinion, the best of these Sci-Fi Channel shows. And it's called Eureka. Eureka is about a town of scientists who live in this town called Eureka, where they invent impossible inventions, and then the impossible inventions go wrong, and the sheriff of the town, who is not a scientist, has to save the day. Pretty much what it is. Number 10 is a show I watched a lot, and it was an action-adventure show from the early 90s that was about a guy in a motorboat. Sci-fi motorboat. So it was basically Knight Rider with a boat instead of a car. And it's called Thunder in Paradise. And it actually starred Hulk Hogan, which is what made it popular. But again, I have not been able to find it streaming anywhere, and I have not seen a lot of people talking about it. So I put it under forgotten TV shows. Number 9 is one that I say was forgotten, but is starting to find, people are starting to remember it more now, and it's starting to find a resurgence online. And it is actually in some capacity, a limited capacity, I will say, available for streaming, but not like in its entirety, which is unfortunate. But it's called You Can't Do That on Television. This was a Canadian-produced children's sketch comedy show that launched the Nickelodeon network. And this is the show where the trope of saying, I don't know, gets you a bucket of green slime dumped on your head. That has since become a staple of the Nickelodeon network. Now, I'm aged out of the Nickelodeon viewing audience, so I don't know if that lives on. But it was real big in the 80s and 90s, and this was the show that started it. Number 8 is another Nickelodeon show that I barely remembered. And when I say barely remembered, I didn't remember enough about it to be able to describe it to people or Google to find out what it was for 20 years. I had to have repeated conversations with other 80s kids and just slowly piece it together until I could find out what it was. And again, I have not been able to find much evidence of its existence outside of like an IMDb and a Wikipedia page and very little else. The show is called Today's Special. And the only thing I remember about this show is it had a mannequin that when you put a magic hat on his head and you said the magic words, which I will not say because I don't know if I remember them accurately. But if you said the magic words, he would come alive, except for like the mannequin on the movie The Mannequin. If there were people around, he would freeze up and turn back into a mannequin. Or if the hat came off his head, he would freeze up and turn back into a mannequin. That's all I remember about it. And I'm not 100% certain what I remember is accurate. Number 7 is another animated show. This one was sort of a companion or an, I don't want to say knockoff, but I will say a response to the Smurfs. And this is basically the Smurfs underwater. And it's called the Snorks, which is obviously a play on Smurfs. Again, I have not found much evidence of this show online outside of a few references. So it's another one that I very clearly remember watching at one point in my life. And apparently no one else does. Number 6 is another 90s sitcom that I watched with my mom and dad and my sisters very regularly, and it had several seasons. So I assume it was relatively popular, at least popular enough to get several seasons. So I don't understand why it doesn't exist in the world of streaming as far as I've been able to find it. It's called Grace Under Fire, and it's another family sitcom. It's a single mom raising a daughter. She's a construction worker, and it's just her day-to-day life trying to raise her daughter and interacting with her, her mom and her relatives and coworkers, etc. Now, number 5, only thing I know about this show is I did watch it. I don't remember anything about it. I remember the name, and apparently no one else remembers it either. And it may have been one of those canceled mid-season shows, which may explain why no one else seems to remember it. I don't know. But it's called Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place. And I just remember watching it a few times. But I don't remember anything at all about it. Number 4 is a sitcom I did watch regularly in the 90s. It's an 80s sitcom I watched in reruns in the 90s. Kind of like, I will use another example that is not forgotten, Punky Brewster. I did not watch Punky Brewster in the 80s when it aired. I watched it in the 90s in reruns. I was born in 82. So, but the show is called Kate and Allie. And this is another one of those roommate sitcoms that there were a bajillion of in the 80s. So I imagine this one was forgotten because of the ones that were more successful, more popular, stuck around in people's minds. And this one was just forgotten because people don't remember it because it didn't stick in their minds. Number 3 is another show I could not remember what it was called. And it took a lot of digging to find the name and eventually look it up and find a handful of episodes on the, we'll say on the high seas to watch. But I was never able to piece together an entire season. And I have never met another person that knows about it. So I'm going to chalk it up to another forgotten show. And it's called Small Wonder. Now, the only thing I remember about Small Wonder is it's a little girl around 8, 9, or 10 years old in that age range who is not a little girl. She's actually a robot that is built to look like a little girl and act and behave like one. And I was obsessed with robots in the 80s. So that is likely the only reason why I watched the show. And I don't remember anything else about it. Number 2 is a video game, I want to say game show, but it's also kind of like a trivia and obstacle show. So it's kind of like a Nickelodeon show, like video Nick Arcade or the Hidden Temple or Double Dare or whatever. But this isn't any of those, and it is not a Nickelodeon show, but it's like those kind of shows, similar. And I have never seen it on any lists or brought up or seen any YouTube videos, retrospectives or anything on it. So again, I cannot really confirm. I can confirm its existence, but I can't confirm if it was like a regional show that only aired in my market, like if it was a locally produced show or not. I can't confirm anything beyond that. The show is called Video Power, and all I remember about it is they play video games and earn points, and if they get enough points, they get to run through the maze collecting video games, and at the end of the episode, they get to keep all the video games they collected. Number one is not as forgotten as some of these other shows, but I put it at the top of the list because I feel like it's one that isn't so much forgotten as it's misremembered. And I'm not going to be able to clarify anything more beyond that. The show is called American Gladiators. And the reason why I consider it forgotten, again, is because it's not available on streaming services. Hardly anybody talks about it. I never see the toys come up for sale on eBay. So there are trace elements of evidence that it did at one point in time exist, but not a big cultural stack of evidence that suggests it had a significant impact on the broader culture, at least to my what I've been able to research. Maybe it's more remembered or popular than I'm observing, but I just don't know a lot of people that remember American Gladiators. Other than the NES video game, which I can't confirm people who play it or talk about it even know if it's based on a TV show or not. So this has been my list of the top 25 forgotten TV shows. Enjoy.